Did you ever live in a neighborhood with an abandoned building with a questionable history which is shrouded in mystery? If you're into urban exploration, coming across such a site would be a jackpot. But even the most ardent urban explorers will be drooling over these incredible abandoned spots we have in store today. Discover the 10 strangest abandoned places that really exist, and some of them you can actually explore. Number 10. Rugyong Hotel. North Korea has a lot of abandoned buildings which are built for the sole purpose of propaganda and to give a false sense of economic prosperity. But there is one particular building in the whole country that takes the cake when it comes to this category. The Rugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, or also known as the Hotel of Doom, has never hosted a single guest since its existence. Interestingly, the hotel holds the title for the tallest unoccupied building in the world, with the structure peaking at 1,080 feet. That's not all. This abandoned hotel is also the tallest building in the entire country and is visible for miles from the countryside. The only purpose that it seems to fulfill is for showcasing propaganda light shows being displayed on the facade of the building. The Rugyong Hotel began construction in 1987 and is still under construction. The work on the building often gets interrupted depending on the economic situation in North Korea. The latest upgrade was the installation of glass panels across the building in 2008. The very top of the tower was supposed to house a revolving restaurant, although it seems unlikely that it's being used like the rest of the building. Seems like such a waste of money and potential. Number 9. China's Atlantis. Though the lost city of Atlantis has never been found, there is a close substitute for those who wish to experience something similar. The flooded city of Xizang in China is often called the Atlantis of the East, and you can see why. This mysterious time capsule of a city captures the culture and architecture during Imperial China, with influences from the Ming and Qing dynasty, who ruled between 1368 to 1912. But what makes this city a bit different from the city of Atlantis is the fact that it was never lost. In fact, the city was thriving and alive until the late 1950s, but when the Chinese government started to build a dam, around 300,000 inhabitants of this city were given the boot and were relocated elsewhere. Once the dam was up, the city was flooded to a height of 120 feet with water. The city remained forgotten until 2001, when the government sent out an expedition to check on the forgotten city of Xizang. To their surprise, the city was still in great condition. Since then, the interest for the Atlantis of the East has been increasing, and many new expeditions are undertaken as well. Ironically, the city probably would have never had the same publicity if it wasn't flooded, so maybe it worked out well for them. Number 8. Abandoned Domino Sugar Refinery. Moving from lost ancient cities to something more contemporary, the abandoned Domino Sugar Refinery in Brooklyn's Williamsburg neighborhood would catch the eye of any urban explorer. This 150-year-old structure was part of the American history during its time. At its peak, the refinery had employed 4,500 employees and was capable of processing 4 million pounds of sugar in a single day. But that was a long time ago. The machines at the refinery stopped in 2004 and its employees have since been let go. Except for the main refinery, everything else was demolished in 2014. Sadly, urban explorers will have to skip this one, since there isn't much to explore here but a scrapyard of all the demolished structures. Number 7. Sansi Houses. These futuristic-looking homes were intended to serve as a vacation resort for US servicemen posted in East Asia. The Sansi Houses, or more commonly known as the UFO houses, were designed by Matti Suurinen, a Finnish architect. The construction started in 1978, but unfortunately the original plan for this property never came to fruition, since the project was marred by bizarre incidents since the beginning. While building the Sansi houses, many of the workers perished in strange car and freak accidents. People started attributing these incidents to supernatural causes. One theory was that the property was constructed over a Dutch burial ground of 20,000 soldiers. Another theory claims that the site was cursed after a dragon statue in the area was destroyed during its construction. Ultimately, with all these strange happenings, the Sansi project was eventually abandoned in 1980. For 30 years it remained a ghost town until its complete demolition in 2010. Oddly, this site is now being converted into a water park. Hopefully, nothing freaky happens here again. Number 6. Abandoned USSR Navy Computing Center. The former Soviet Union is an urban exploration haven. After the USSR fell, most of the provinces lost their funding and a major part of the economy came to a standstill. As a result, Russia is filled with abandoned Soviet-era buildings which once had purpose but now remain at the mercy of Mother Nature. This abandoned computing and analytical center for the USSR Navy just outside Moscow is one such building. Sadly, the equipment brought into the project was already outdated at the time of its construction in 1986. That, coupled with the eventual collapse of the USSR in 1991, led to the ultimate demise and abandonment of this project. What you're left with are these massive buildings which are mere shells of their true purpose. Number 5. Petrova Gora. When wars are fought, you often are left with remnants of pain and suffering of a generation of people. In order to commemorate and immortalize this sentiment, countries or governments often erect memorials. The Petrova Gora is a similar monument built in honor of the Croatian victims of World War II. You might be wondering why the memorial looks so dilapidated. Well, it wasn't built this way when architect Vojin Bakic constructed the site in 1981. Over the years, locals approached the memorials as not a site to pay their respects, but as a source of scrap metal and scavenged most of the building. Though the structure still remains, it is not in its former glory. The monument stands on top of Veliki Petrovac, the highest peak of Petrova Gora, which is a mountain range in Croatia. Interestingly, beneath the structure there's a network of tunnels and rooms used as a field hospital during World War II, and then later by Yugoslavian communists as a meeting point. It's a fascinating place. Number 4. Treehouse in Taiwan. If there's one common thing about most abandoned buildings, it's that nature will always prevail and take over. Remember the movie I Am Legend? You see the entire Times Square in New York being taken over by foliage and essentially turning it into a prairie. Something of a similar sight can be seen in Tainan, Taiwan as well. The Anping treehouse may look like an interesting treehouse in the beginning, but it wasn't always the case. The Anping building used to be a brick-and-mortar warehouse built in the 19th century for storing goods before being loaded into transport ships. Once the warehouse was abandoned, the neighboring banyan tree took over it completely. With time, the entire building was overgrown with the branches and roots of the tree. What remains now are rubble held together by the roots, occupying the shape of the former warehouse. It's almost like a living fossil of an old building. Number 3. Al-Wukair Scrapyard. What's this strange place in the middle of the desert? Vehicles of all kinds, from excavators to cranes and motorbikes to cars, all of them seem to be coated in a thick layer of white sand and dust. From the looks of it, it seems like your average scrapyard, and in some respects it is so. The Al-Wukair scrapyard in the desert of Qatar, and 12 miles from the city of Doha, is unlike any other scrapyard. If you notice, most of the vehicles here are in excellent condition except for the dust coating. So why on earth is there a collection of vehicles which hasn't been scrapped yet for parts? Well, you can call this place a sort of purgatory for seized vehicles for people who've committed misdemeanors. Though they might not be scrapped, once a year an auction is held for the best vehicles in the lot and sold to the highest bidder. Actually, not a bad way to get rid of these seized vehicles. Number 2. Verne High Angle Battery. If there is anything worth appreciating about wars fought a long time ago, it's the remnants of the building and weapons built during that time. One such structure can be seen in the United Kingdom on the Isle of Portland in Dorset, England. The Verne High Angle Battery was constructed in 1892 and was built to protect the Portland harbour. Though it's been decommissioned since 1906, the site remains intact and became a monument in 1973. Due to the strategic placement of this battery, it was cleverly tucked away from enemy forces which came this way. Unfortunately, the gun battery only lasted 15 years after it was operational, since maritime warfare had progressed far too quickly to justify using this outdated facility. From 1918, the battery was used for storing field guns from France, and later in the 1960s, it was used for testing the capsules in which nuclear materials were transported. Though the battery's main purpose has long been abandoned, it still remains to this day a very popular tourist attraction. Number 1. St. Nicholas Fortress. And lastly, we head back to Croatia once again to this interesting-looking fortress at the mouth of St. Anthony's Chapel in Šibenik on the Adriatic coast. The St. Nicholas Fortress was famous for being an impregnable fortress during its period of service, which was an impressive 400 years. It was built by the Venetians in the 16th century as a defense against Turkish boats landing on the port. It was manned with 32 cannons, but its intimidating structure was an even bigger threat to the enemy. Over the centuries, the fortress served different armies and also saw various renovations, keeping with the times and eventually being abandoned by the military in 1979. Even today, the structure looks so imposing and scary against the backdrop of the Adriatic Sea. No wonder the fortress lasted so long. And that's all of them. Is there any site from the list which you would love to explore? Let us know in the comments, and before you go, be sure to smash the like button, share and subscribe for more amazing content. See you again.